Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 57. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us on this Wednesday. Happy December 1st to you guys, and hopefully maybe a better day than we're having over here. Dave and I trying to rewatch this game and relive the Steelers' 41-10 loss to the Bengals this past Sunday. But I've got a great show for you guys today. A little bit later on, we'll have a great guest of the show, John Eisenberg, who covers the Ravens for Ravens.com, Ravens columnist and author of many books, including The League. You can find him on Twitter at @BMoreEisenberg. So we'll talk with John here in a little bit to get his perspective on this 8-3 Ravens team. From a Steelers standpoint, Dave, a lot to talk about. A lot of, I don't know if drama is the right word, probably not the right word, but certainly a lot of headlines lately with the Steelers team, good and bad, mostly bad.
We will not go gently. We're going to unleash hell here in December because we have to. We won't go into a shell. We're going to go into attack mode because that's what's required. Oh, what year are we? That's November.
That's Braveheart, right?
That's November 29th. Yeah. I've never seen that. Have you seen Braveheart?
No, I've never seen Braveheart.
Look at there.
Look at that.
Look at us. I don't know. That might be the most entertaining part of this show, especially with me being involved in it. Mike Tomlin, November 29th, 2009. Seems like yesterday. Happy December to everybody. Alex, I hope you're feeling better. And which direction would you like to go with this now?
Well, do you want to talk about kind of the peripheral outside Claypool type stuff, or do you want to get into the meat of the injury report? Tomlin, do you want to start with the appetizer or the main course? I'll let you choose.
Yeah, let's start with the Claypool stuff there first, because that's obviously got a pretty good run there. My thoughts. So my initial thoughts was Claypool doesn't look like he thoroughly enjoys media sessions now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, explain for people, the one person who does not know what we're talking about. What did Claypool say on Monday?
In so many, I don't have the quote in front of me, right. But I was asked about what would make maybe practices better, or and in so many words, he says, well, in college they play music during practice, and I know we have practice during stretch sessions and all like that, but maybe adding some music during practice would help make practice, I think, more fun. I think fun was used in there, and I think tempo was used in there as well too. Is it just a poor choice of words with the optics coming off of getting your butt handed to you? Yeah. There's part of me thinks that he was just trying to fill time and just, kind of be a little funny there, if you will. I struggle with trying to heavily criticize the kid for the comments that he made in the context as part of the question that he was asked, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the idea of music of practice isn't necessarily a horrible one. It's one that, some players get jazzed and energized by that. And at this point, I'm willing to look at anything and everything. I think every part of how this team operates, Monday through Sunday practice, what they eat, how they sleep, and of course, how they play, should be evaluated. So I'm not even against the idea in principle, but the optics, obviously, of you just got destroyed by the Bengals 41-10, and we're talking about needing to have more fun at practice. That's just not going to play well. And I think you have to be kind of self-aware enough to understand that's just not the right thing to say publicly and put that into the ether at a time like this.
Yeah, look, I mean, the timing of it was not ideal at all. And you use self-awareness. But even
just read the room, Claypool, is kind of what I'm getting at here.
But even so, this is a young kid, and I don't know, maybe he doesn't get it. I don't know. But of all the things that we've talked about over the years on this show about, oh my God, I can't believe, this is making the media rounds right now, or why did so and so say this? this ranks way down there.
Sure.
And there's part of me still that thinks that he just wasn't self-aware of what he was saying. He said, maybe just ask, hey, I'd like some more music at practice. That would get me hyped up. And maybe he genuinely meant that. Maybe I
Hmm.
need more music at practice to maybe practice better. I hope that's not the root of what he's getting to, because it sounds like the only kind of music that Chase Claypool is going to get at practice this week is the sweet sound of pads hitting each other there. But yeah, I understand why it blew up. It's an easy target there, but there's part of me I want to face palm and then just move on. You know.
Right. Same. Yeah, I think it was just unaware comment there, or lacking self awareness, and to say that. But I'm not gonna harp on the kid forever, and make this a 4 day story, although it ultimately has kind of, I guess, become that. But
And look,
this.
he's also not great timing from him personally too, because the game that he had a couple of key drops in
Right.
there, had the penalty, and not keeping his head, and yada yada, and obviously not having a superb second season. So yeah, had he caught 6 passes for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns and penalty free and no drops, it might have been a little easier, even in a butt kicking, to maybe kind of swallow those comments. But yeah, I mean, here we are spending 5 minutes on it, and it's not the worst thing that's come out of a player's mouth with the Pittsburgh media over the last several years.
Sure. Although clearly veterans like Kim Hayward did not seem to agree with those comments. I think Hayward's comment to DVE yesterday was that when I heard that, I wanted to rip the speaker out. And Mike Tomlin said, I'll set the practice schedule and Claypool will play wideout. So I don't think Claypool is going to get his wish.
Right. I mean, look, he's not a bad kid. I mean, like Juju, just got to be like just circle back to what you said. Just got to be more self-aware. And there's a You know, if you don't want to say anything, don't try to be funny if that's what you're trying to do in those situations there, because it's easy to take these things literal and out of context and all. And I tell you what, he's probably not having a good couple of days since uttering those words, and I imagine probably get hounded pretty good by a few of those veterans this week during
Yeah.
practice as well too. So once again, I don't think there'll be a lot of dancing going on.
Right, right. Dave, some more substantial type of news here. Steelers have made a roster move, signing defensive tackle, defensive lineman Montravius Adams off the Saints practice squad. Maybe not the prototypical nose tackle type of body, listed 6'4", I think 305 when he came out, but that was about 4 years ago, so I don't know what his weight is at today. And so Mike Tomlin said he's got to get up to speed, obviously learn the playbook and things like that, but this team desperate for defensive line help. Hopefully Carlos Davis can come off of IR this weekend. We don't know for sure on that, but Montravius Adams signed to the Steelers roster.
Yeah, and I think we hit on that on our live stream on Monday night. I think the move had
Yeah.
maybe, or we had an inkling, news had broken that the Steelers were going to sign him off the Saints practice squad. I haven't gone deep into the tape with him, just a general look at a couple of highlights on him, that kind of thing there. Uh, kind of pairing a little bit of news, I guess, with that, the Steelers' latest depth chart that was released, and normally you don't pay too much mind to these things when they hit the weekly media release that the Steelers send out there. But when you look at the depth chart overall, the noticeable thing there was Isaiah Buggs is now behind Henry Mondeau at the nose tackle position, and obviously this comes on the heels of Isaiah Buggs being made inactive for the game that and I think we already kind of hit on that a little bit
Hmm.
too. And uh, to 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 expect Adams to come in and play a large amount of snaps, I think will he even be active? I guess would be question number one. Number two is Carlos Davis. They still got some time in that window, so they don't necessarily have to make Carlos Davis activate him off of IR this week. But if they do, you're going to have a numbers thing to deal with, because Adams is on the 53-man roster there, and you know, to me, and if you go back to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but Bugs obviously hadn't been around very long, but his two best games of his career I think were against the Ravens, were they not?
Well, he had that big fourth down stop on Lamar on that quarterback draw. What was it last year? I don't know if there's a common theme that it's been the Ravens or if it's just been happenstance that those two games have come against Baltimore. But yeah, I think to answer your question, I think the answer to that is yes.
Is this Mike Tomlin? Now, look, you're not just going to sign a guy off a guy's practice squad to motivate another guy, but
Right.
that combined with the demotion on the depth chart, combined with him being inactive against the Bengals, is this some sort of thing for Mike Tomlin to see what he can get out of Isaiah Buggs in practice this week? And if practice goes well, could we still get into uh, 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 a Sunday situation here where Isaiah Buggs starts at nose tackle?
I suppose. I mean,
Or,
at
or,
this
or am I trying to read way too much into this? And Mike Tomlin, to me, for some reason, this just kind of feels like the ultimate try to get the guy up for this game. And if he has a good week of practice, put him in there and say, all right, you practice well. You've played good, for your limited amount of snaps against the Ravens here. You better impact this game, and we're gonna start you. I mean, how do you feel
I get
about
that.
Henry Mondeau starting at
Bad.
at nose
Bad.
nose
Really bad.
tackle? How do you feel
That's
about
like
Cameron Hayward having to start at nose tackle?
I mean, he played okay there, but obviously that's not his ideal spot, and it hurt. And that just shifts Mondo to right defensive end. So you're just kind of moving chairs on the Titanic. When you do that kind of stuff, it doesn't really help you overall. With Bugs, I mean, I get that maybe, but this guy wasn't properly motivated by being the starting nose tackle of this team and the opportunity that comes with that. Then I don't know what's going to motivate him. So. I mean, he's just a really frustrating guy. And listen, I've been as critical of him as possible. I still don't think that should have made him inactive for the Bengals game when you play Archibong for 5 snaps and effectively only have 4 defensive linemen that you're rotating in that game. But I mean, Bugs just has to be a more consistent and a more trusted guy. And will that change over the course of 1 week? I suppose it could if he has an awesome week of practice. But I think there's just a lot of frustration because coaches hate the mental mistakes and the assignment stuff more than anything else. When you tell a guy what to do over and over and he continues to screw it up, that's going to get you benched. And that seems to be what's happening there with Isaiah Bugs.
Yeah, we're supposed to be so smart here and have all the answers here, what's going to happen, and previewing this upcoming game and who's going to be where and all. I've got no idea what they're probably going to do on Sunday at nose tackle. Do you have any kind of a feel on the 5 that are going to be active? What the line's going to look like?
I don't, and they might not know either right now. I think they're throwing a lot at the wall and seeing what sticks. So you get 5 active. Obviously, you have Hayward, Wormley, Loudermilk. That's 3. So that's 2 spots left for Bugs, Mondo, Adams,
Maybe
and Carlos
Carlos,
Davis. If
maybe
he gets
Carlos
back.
Davis, right?
Yeah. So you pick the 2. If Davis is if Davis is healthy, you activate him and play him. So that's a 4th. That leaves you 1 spot for Mondo, Bugs, or Adams. And I mean, I guess you take your pick at that point. Whoever has a good week of practice, if Adams is ready, if Bugs looks better, and if not, then I guess Mondo's kind of a default option.
And you don't feel great, obviously tickled to death about any of those, right?
Right. I think they have to stop playing Mondo, though. I mean, he's just giving you nothing. He's a good athlete. He can play at special teams a bit. He replaced Spillane last week as the, I think, left tackle or left guard on the punt team. But, I mean, he just is horrible against the run. He's just not strong enough to hold the point of attack. And you put him out there against this Ravens team that's going to go physical, going to go heavy. You're just going to have a bad time.
All right, so we'll have to see how that plays out. We'll get probably a few answers, or at least one answer, maybe on Saturday, to see if Carlos Davis comes off of IR to the active roster there. Adams obviously on the 53-man roster, and we'll just have to see how it plays out from there. I don't have a clue which way it's going to go, to be honest with you.
Right. And we'll have a report on Adams a little bit either later today or tomorrow morning. Actually, Jonathan Heitritter, as we were talking, just told me the film room on Adams is ready to go. So we'll have that today or tomorrow. So, Dave, Mike Tomlin.
Do you want with him? I mean, he's not a traditional kind. I mean, to me, he's more of a 1-gapper than anything. Not a very good 2-gapper. I could maybe see bringing in a big plugger like that from outside if you all of a sudden decided, you know what? Let's just get someone to sit in the middle and keep the linebackers cleaner here. But that's really not his it's not the strength of his game, at least from what I've seen with Adams. He's more of just another one of those larger, penetrating, one gap type defensive tackles.
Yeah, but I mean, Pittsburgh's been more of a one gap system, and if you get penetration and cause the running back to get off track, and if that improves your gap integrity and stuff like that, then maybe there's a place for that. I'm just looking for any sort of help in the middle right now because they've just had nothing there since Alu broke his ankle, 5 quarters into the season.
Do you think Adams plays?
When I first signed him, I thought he would. I'll say this: if Davis is ready to go, then Adams probably will not play. Is my guess.
Okay.
But I don't know. These are all just more guesses than usual. Is how I'm framing it.
Right. All right.
All right, Mike Tomlin holding his press conference on Tuesday. We'll start things here with the injury report there and a couple names to note. Robert Spillane with a knee sprain. Tomlin's quote for him was, "We'll probably make him less than available this week." So not good news for Spillane. Pat Freiermuth is officially in concussion protocol. We'll see what happens there. Tomlin optimistic that Joe Hayden will come back with the foot sprain that's caused him to miss the last 2 games. Obviously, TJ Watt in COVID protocol, and even long snapper Christian Kuntz has a hip injury that, quote, may limit him at the early portions of the week. So hopefully he'll be able to go. He probably will be. If not, they'll have to sign somebody, or new offensive lineman John LeGlue has some long snapping capability. Did that in training camp. So that's a name to watch there as a potential backup option.
Yeah, and obviously the big story is Watt. I mean, just looking at the recent history of what's happened with these guys that go on COVID, on the COVID list early in the week, it's not a good history, right? I mean, you had Roethlisberger, you had Minka, and then you had Ray McLeod, and all those guys ended up missing the game after being placed on that list there. So. I guess keep your fingers crossed about Watt. It sounds like as long as things go well with Freiermuth and the concussion protocol, that as long as there's no setbacks, he should be ready. Joe Hayden, it sounds like they're expecting him back. Spillane, not so much. I would kind of expect him to be down. And depending on the seriousness, who knows? Maybe he goes to IR. Don't really know, but I wouldn't expect him to practice much, if any, this week. There, that would obviously potentially open up a helmet for a guy maybe like Buddy Johnson to get in and help on special teams at a minimum there. And who is the? I mean, they haven't signed a long snapper yet, right? So
right.
That's generally a good sign.
Yeah, I think Kuntz will be able to play, but we'll get the practice report starting today and go from there. And yeah, TJ Watt, is it possible he comes back and gets cleared? Yes, but the history says these players miss about 10 days. And so Watt, unlikely, I would say, to come back for the Ravens game.
Yeah, I think, we've been wrong about this before, obviously, and who knows when you're talking about COVID and stuff like that. But I mean, just keep your fingers crossed, because they need him for sure, right? I mean, there's no two ways about it here. And they protected who was Jacob? What's his last name?
Yeah, the edge guy. I forget. It's a hyphenated last name. I don't remember at the top of my head here.
Right. They protected him, so that's obviously a fallback. He could be a COVID elevation. Well, we'll get a better idea once again on Saturday when it comes to some of these roster moves before they get into Sunday for sure.
All right, Dave. Mike Tomlin, beyond the injury report there, spoke with the media yesterday. Said they're going to be subtle but hopefully significant changes coming to the Steelers from a personnel standpoint. Obviously did not get into details about what those changes could look like and how it'll function. He said they may be more about the, reorganization of people in terms of depth and how you play things. So it might not be the drastic bench this guy, start this guy, but maybe just decrease roles and more subtle things based on packages, and really no concrete answer there. But don't expect, according to Tom at least, making these big sweeping obvious changes come Sunday.
Yeah, it doesn't. A few of them. We talked about defensive tackle. I mean, are you expecting any changes along the offensive line?
Tomlin didn't. The way that Tomlin phrased it didn't seem to imply that there would be. But if you're going to make some changes there, you certainly could by playing Zach Banner at right tackle, moving Okorafor to left tackle, and benching Dan Moore Jr. So if there's a move to make, that's probably the one to make. Now maybe you just go more jumbo packages with Banner, as that 6 offensive lineman, as they've started to do a bit these last 2 weeks, or something like that. But if there's a move to make, that's going to be the move.
Right. And what did you think?
And defensively, I don't know what you do in terms of like the tweaks and changes, aside from some D-line shuffling.
Right, D-line shuffling and hopefully getting Hayden back in there, which is
Right.
an obviously necessary move. And any chance they just uh, obviously with Spillane likely going to be out, that's not going to do much of anything. It'd be interesting, I guess, to see. We talked about maybe Marcus Allen and UG3 getting some snaps, but I think that's even probably a little bit to hear Mike Tomlin talk. That would be more on the drastic side, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just spitballing. Maybe do something with Millette and get him some more snaps as some stopping nickel snaps. Maybe Killebrew, you could find a way to infuse him in there when the Ravens go heavy personnel, which they're going to do this Sunday. You can guarantee it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. This team does not have a lot of depth here, and so they're just limited because of the injuries and COVID and just lack of depth right now.
We're full of I don't knows this morning.
Yeah, we really are. So hopefully you're listening to us still for our I don't knows.
All right, Tomlin talking about obviously a lot of former Steelers are coming. Ryan Clark, who else? Rocky Blyer. I mean Brian McFadden, Chris Hoke. Geez, I mean they're all coming out of woodwork, really lambasting the performance against the Bengals there. Mike Tomlin, in so many words, says I don't blame him. I bought into what Tomlin had to say a week ago. He sold me on the bill of goods there. Are you buying anything that Mike Tomlin trying to get this team up for this AFC North battle?
Well, I mean, you can, and Tomlin said this. I mean, you can buy into the talk as much as you want, but it's, he said, it's put up or shut up time. Talk is cheap, talk is done. They've talked a lot, and it hasn't happened. So it's all about executing. And so none of this really matters right now until you get some results on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays coming up. So I mean, that's ultimately all that this team's going to be judged by.
All right, what else did Mike Tomlin have to say?
That was probably the bulk of it. Yeah, mentioned they're going to be in pads this week, and I don't know how many practices of pads they'll get in. I know CBA, curbs the number of padded practices teams can have, but at least 1 or 2 days of this week, it sounds like. And mentioned James Pierre's struggles, and it was a little weird comment there. He said, Tomlin said he was in the stadium, and that's why we made the changes that we did, referring to Pierre. And Pierre did get benched in that game, but it was like till there were 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So I'm not sure if that was benching really was effective in any sort of meaningful point in the game. So a bit of a curious comment there from Mike Tomlin about James Pierre.
And Mike Tomlin obviously asked about Devin Bush again, still coming back from ACL. Is it more of a mental work that needs to happen, or are there some physical things that he's got to catch up with? Mike Tomlin said it's both because he's an extremely young guy. He's still very much growing in terms of awareness and all the things that come with playing inside linebacker in the National Football League. And obviously he needs physical work because there's a lack of volume of plays. He's had a lot of plays. Volume of plays on his career resume. He's a guy that probably falls into both categories like a lot of people. So that's words, right?
Yeah, I didn't say a whole lot there ultimately. What's your take on Vince Williams weighing in on Twitter yesterday about Devin Bush basically coming to Bush's defense more than most people have, saying about the difficulty of obviously rehabbing and returning from that ACL tear, a lack of self-confidence. Had mentioned the passing of Jerry Olszewski's wife, the Steelers inside linebackers coach, and the media using Bush as the scapegoat. What were your thoughts on what Vince had to say?
Not much of anything, honestly. It felt like a guy kind of just feeling sorry for his former teammate and probably still good friend and all like that, and just trying to help keep the Flames at a minimum. I don't view the media as pinning all the Steelers' problems on Devin Bush.
I don't know if I would apply it to the media specifically, but just overall in the commentary about the Steelers defense, I think, and I've talked about this several weeks ago, I think there's been an overall hyper focus on Devin Bush, that every single play that goes wrong, someone seems to point to Devin Bush as the sole guy. And I'm generalizing a little bit here, but I've seen so many instances of, like 95% of the criticism has been about Devin Bush, not about the defensive problems that run far deeper than him. So in that respect, I think Bush is certainly ripe for criticism. He has not played well at all. But I think the problems go much deeper than him.
Well, I mean, and stopping the run's an 11-man job, and you do your job, you get in your gap, and then everybody does their job, and you get the ball carrier down on the ground, and that's stopping the run. Obviously, up the middle, the top of the show, we talked a lot about in the middle of that. The middle of that defensive line, Joe Schobert obviously not going to go to the Pro Bowl this year. I don't think anybody. Hopefully, nobody that's listening has listened to this show. Devin Bush is a problem on the defensive side of the ball. Let's not kid ourselves. But I mean, you have James Pierre getting mossed by Higgins. I mean, there's just so much wrong with it. But it is easier to focus on a guy like Bush because he's supposed to be the quarterback of your defense there. He's a former first-round draft pick. He's not playing well. So, yeah, it is easy to highlight all that. But maybe in so many words, and it was in so many words that Vince Williams was saying, look at the other 10 too.
Right. That's his point. And I get and agree with that.
Right. But on the flip side, and at least Williams did point out the fact that there are some effort things going on with Bush, right?
Yeah, Vince did not defend Bush's play. I think he was trying to explain why the play has not been good enough. And to me, that's where he loses me a bit because bottom line is either you're playing well or you're not. And I understand the circumstances and it's hard and it's tough, but either you're playing well or you're not. And if you're not, then you're going to be rightfully criticized for it.
Right. And look, as far as the other common color that he added in there, look, we all have problems. Right?
Sure. And I get, I don't want to minimize how difficult of an injury that is. And I can't obviously empathize with that, but I can sympathize with the idea of a major knee injury and how that can, maybe potentially hurt a player who's built on speed and explosion. But we've seen that speed and explosion. Like, it doesn't look much different.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it doesn't look. Only Bush can tell you how much of a difference there is from last year to this year, but it doesn't look like he's noticeably slower or less explosive.
No, I mean, and there are times where you kind of wonder about the effort. Plain and simple.
Right. So, but again, to the idea of Bush becoming just the central figure as opposed to being one guy on a team with a lot of problems. I completely agree with what Vince Williams is saying there.
All right, I will agree to the point that he is an easy target.
Right. Because like I said, whenever, that touchdown to Mike Williams against the Chargers, I got people blaming Devin Bush for that play. Bush wasn't in his spot, and that ruined Norwood and cost him and no, Norwood made a mistake there, and that's the bottom line. And so that's whenever I think about Bush being the scapegoat, because anytime I post a defensive play, it's even I'm talking about a defensive lineman getting washed. It's look at what Devin Bush is doing on this play. So to that point, I got what Williams was getting at.
How would you compare? And it's hard to do different positions and all like that, but and obviously not knowing exactly what the play.
Oh, you're going on Devin Bush Senior.
Yeah, Devin Bush Senior here. Talking about don't know the play and the assignment and all, but just loosely, the way the team dealt with Artie Burns several years ago, because he was effectively, and it was right before that. I think it was like 6 games into his third season that they had seen enough and taken him off the field. And here we are. I guess technically it's around about the same amount of games overall. Maybe Bush is lacking about 6 or 7 games. But is there any kind of comparison to be made about how close the Steelers should potentially be to maybe pulling the plug, or at least just sitting them down for a couple games?
Yeah, it's hard to gauge.
Makes it even harder. Robert Spillane goes down with a knee injury.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier if Spillane was still an option, assuming he's out this week, and we'll see what his practice is like, but probably won't play. Yeah, it's tough to compare those situations, but my thoughts. I think you have to at least reduce Bush's role the way they did, even for a guy like Trey Norwood. Whenever he was struggling with a larger role early in the season, they kind of scaled things down and put him in just dime packages instead of being nickel and dime. maybe you focus Bush on just a nickel role or something like that to try to maybe, increase his confidence, make him feel more confident about what he's seeing out there, just put less on his plate. Maybe that'll help him out mentally a little bit. It's worth a try at this point, and that may mean playing a Marcus Allen in base or something like that. At this point, I'm all for it.
Vince Williams goes on to say, he's still 23 or whatever, and if he plays till he's 30, and he's still got time, that's all fine and good. But now is the now, and
Right.
and the now is not great, and we'll see about obviously the fifth year option. Things normally don't go well for first round picks in Pittsburgh if they don't have their fifth year option picked up, right? They usually
Right.
end up elsewhere after their fourth season. We'll see what happens with Terrell Edmonds because he's in that same category as well. Let's end this Devin Bush beat up session by me asking you this question on a concern meter from 1 to 10, where 1 super concerned about Devin Bush to 10, I'm not worried about Bush. Where are you?
I mean, obviously, you're really concerned with this play. So, I mean, like, if one's super concerned, then it'd be like a 1.5, a 2.
All right.
Or I mean, is that a bad answer? Like, where
No,
are
I
you
mean
at?
I'm about a 2 on the concern meter. I'm very concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. But it's not me saying that he shouldn't be the scapegoat does not absolve him of his play. It just says that there's been a hyper focus that the issues run, like I said, far deeper than just what Bush is or is not doing out there.
All right. And look, I mean, we talked about ahead of the Bengals game. Boy, if there was ever a perfect time for Devin Bush to start playing better, it would have been against the Bengals. Well, that didn't happen, so I guess we just rewrap that and put it back under the tree for this week, right?
Yeah, it's like the old plant a tree reference. The best time to plant a tree was yesterday. The next best time is today. So I guess that's just how you'll frame it with Bush. The best time to start playing well was the last game. The next best time is this game. So we hope for better play, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Moving on from the Devin Bush beat up portion of the podcast.
Anything else there for Mike Tomlin? I think that was probably about it from Coach T.
Yeah, let me scan real quick here. I don't remember anything else. Stephon Tuitt, not much there. Just won't really look past this week. And he says, can we assume, or are you assuming at this point that Stephon Tuitt will not be back this year? He says, I'm not, and to be honest with you, I hadn't given it a lot of thought. I don't have a 6-week perspective. I have a Ravens week perspective. He won't be available to us this week, and so people that have my attention are those that will be. We'll continue to monitor his progress, and when he gets closer, I'll have an update for you guys. Can we parse that anyway into, well, he said if he when he gets close, can we pull those few words out of there and have a little optimism there?
I think you're stretching a little bit. I'm not expecting him to come back this season. I'm not ruling him out. Who the heck knows? But I think December 15th is kind of the deadline because I imagine it'll take 3 weeks to get back for him to get the practice reps and get conditioning right and all that. So December 15th will put you back for an appearance in Week 18. So if he does not return by then I think there's really no path to return this season.
All right, and obviously talking about Lamar Jackson ahead of this game, he was asked, you guys give up rushing yards to Justin Herbert, and then Joe Burrow had a rushing touchdown. You're going against Lamar Jackson. Is there a common theme that you're looking to address this week? And Thomas says, yes, Jackson is more dangerous than those two, so we've got our work cut out for us. That's probably the best answer that and just calling Lamar Jackson Houdini.
Yeah.
Were probably the couple of the best answers that he gave. He was asked about Eric Ebron and J.C. Hassenauer. By the way, Eric Ebron posted on his social on Instagram of him having some sort of procedure seemingly done on his right knee. He, of course, is on IR right now. J.C. Hassenauer is on IR right now. Mike Tomlin has no broad timeline on when those guys will return, if they will return at this point. So, that's kind of a captain obvious there. He was asked about Carlos Davis. Could be a guy to activate this week, or will Montravius Adams maybe fit somewhere in there? He says both guys are capable. Well, all right. Adams has a few more hurdles to clear because learning what to do is a component of it. Carlos has been practicing and will continue to monitor his progress and the quality of that work and let that be our guide in terms of his potential inclusion. So no clear answer there what's going to happen with Carlos Davis or Adams this week.
They could use the help. They need some new bodies out there to try to do something different because the guys they're working with are not getting the job done, and that much is obvious.
Right.
All right, Dave. Any other interviews here from players? I know Ben's speaking now. I don't think he said anything too notable. He says we gotta just chew up and spit out the Bengals performance and move on, and that seems to be the bulk of the interesting answers from Ben today.
Yeah, of course I haven't heard all of it yet, but anything that's noteworthy, we will pick out of there and write about it here in the next couple hours.
All right, Dave. Should we talk with John Eisenberg now and get a preview of the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so we'll talk with John Eisenberg, again, Baltimore Ravens columnist, author of many books, including The League, books that Dave and I both own. Wonderful read. So it's a good holiday present this season. You can follow John on Twitter at @BMoreEisenberg. Let's talk to John and get his thoughts on the Ravens.
Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Wednesday. It is week 13 of the NFL season. It is Ravens versus Steelers part 1 on Sunday late afternoon at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. And that, of course, means that we are pleased to have back on the show our most recurring guest on the show and has been for some time now. It's not even close. That, of course, means we have back on the show John Eisenberg. John covers the Baltimore Ravens for BaltimoreRavens.com. He also is the author of The League, a book that several of you, I believe, have already purchased. And if you haven't, it's perfect time right here in the holidays to do so. We'll have John talk a little bit more about that and any other projects he's working on later on in the interview. So with all that, John, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex. How are you on this Wednesday?
I'm doing great, and it's always a pleasure to be on with you guys. Thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure. As in addition to that, so John, let's start first and foremost. This is a Baltimore Ravens team that is atop the AFC right now overall, not only in the North but in the AFC overall, with an 8-3 record, coming off of a I don't know, probably not as unappetizing of a game maybe as Steeler fans witnessed on Sunday, but it certainly was an interesting game against the Browns Sunday night to watch Lamar Jackson throw 4 interceptions and the Ravens still find a way to win that game. And it seems to be the common theme of the Ravens this year. They find a way to win some of these games. So with that, and look at all these injuries that the Ravens have had this year. I find that super impressive first and foremost. So based on everything that this team's gone through right now, injury-wise, are you surprised this team is 8-3 right now?
I am surprised, yes, because those were, as you alluded to, I mean, this team, every team has injuries, and nobody feels sorry for you, so it is what it is on that. But the Ravens definitely have had a lot. They certainly set the standard for a while here in the league in 2021 with their entire offensive backfield. Every running back wiped out, including guys they were counting on, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and then Ronnie Stanley, the best offensive lineman, saw the field in one game and was not playing at the standard he wanted, and he was coming back from an ankle injury, a terrible one, and has just went through the surgery again because he's trying to get right. So, and then Marcus Peters, great defensive back. I mean, just on and on. They've just been dealing with it all season, and so I really felt that it would have an impact on this team, and in some respects, it has. It has changed the Ravens. Their defense is not nearly the shutdown defense, or it has not been week-to-week basis. You can move the ball on them, and they've given up a lot of big plays late in games too, with the game on the line. Giving up a ton of big plays, and the offense is really different. Not the gashing running attack they've had before. Even though they're ranked high in the league in rushing, but a lot of that is Lamar Jackson running around. And it's a sort of a more modest running game, but yet, as you said, I mean, they have, and it's to their testament. I mean, you have to give it to them. Have found a way to win, made enough stops, made enough plays in offense. Helps having Lamar, of course, and something that's happened every week. I mean, one week it was Justin Tucker kicking the long, and that certainly helped to have probably the best kicker in the league, kicks the longest field goal in history to win a game. So it's been one thing after another. They fall behind, Lamar gets hot, and they catch up. Or Lamar misses a game with illness. Another week it was a backup quarterback. Tyler Huntley, who'd never started a game, leading a game-winning drive at the end. Then Sunday night against the Browns, it was just with 4 interceptions, but yet the best defensive effort of the season and just enough plays to make it. So you got to give them credit. I give them great credit. I did not expect them to survive the injuries with the best record in the AFC going into Week 13. I would not have bet on that at all.
When you talk about Lamar Jackson, and look, you look no further than maybe that touchdown pass that he threw the other night. Just kind of the things that he can do, the ability to extend the play and stuff like that. What have you seen from him? Is this just? Have you seen any progression in his game? Have you seen more progression or regression, or just status quo kind of Lamar at this point in his career?
I'm definitely seeing progression. He is throwing more interceptions this year. 4 in one game certainly doesn't help your season total. And those are some bad reads and in several cases, and just errant throws, throwing the ball to the wrong place. But he has definitely progressed, even from his MVP season 2 years ago. He will go through his reads much more now. He will look defensive backs off with his eyes. He will be more judicious about when to run and when not to run. So the real sort of mechanics of how he plays have changed, and that's definitely development. He has developed, but at the same time, he's just a unicorn. He's a unique player, and so he's never going to just fit into a category. And so you just get the whole package with him. That's just the way it goes. He's going to make some of those weird reads, throw the ball in the wrong place, but he's also going to make a play that no one else could make. Go back 22 yards behind the line of scrimmage, throw a touchdown pass. So, and you know what? The pros outweigh the cons. It's not even close. So you just live with the other stuff.
John, despite all the injuries of running backs, no J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, has this run game schematically changed at all under Greg Roman? Because it feels like it's basically the same, just with different pieces, given all the injuries.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, just not as much explosion, not nearly as much explosion. But, they're ranked high in the league in rushing. As I said, Lamar helps that. But, Devontae Freeman, he's averaging over 4.5 yards a carry. And so they put him in, and he's still got a little bit of wiggle left, I think. Latavius Murray they bring in, and he's just sort of a battering ram. He's averaging about 3.5 yards a carry. They just throw him into the line. Of course, they briefly had Le'Veon Bell, and he actually did a few things well for him. Caught the ball and was a good blocker, but didn't have much left as a runner. So they parted ways with him. But Freeman is doing the majority of it at this point because he's averaging more yards per carry. So it is what it is. It's not big numbers, but the one thing that is happening that is important, and this has happened in the last few weeks, is they are sticking with it. They will just continue to hammer that running game. It's more 2nd and 9 than anyone would want, but they keep with it. They hope Lamar can make a play. And then by the second half, things change, and maybe the other defense gets a little tired, and they start doing a little better. This is the way they've always sort of used that running game. It's just a hammer, and you just keep hammering. And as a result, even though their offensive numbers are down the last 3 weeks quite a bit because teams have been blitzing them like crazy since the Dolphins did. Everybody's following that game plan. But the last 2 games, both the wins, they have a huge time of possession advantage. Almost 20 minutes in one game. And so they're just hammering away with this running game and with more of a possession passing game against the blitz. and they're holding on to the ball and at least keeping the other team's offense off the field.
It probably won't take many swings of that hammer to get through the Steelers' front seven, so you guys might be in good shape this weekend. The one guy who really seems to be a catalyst in this run game, a super underrated player in this era of spread offenses and 5,000 yards passing, is Patrick Ricard, number 42. This dude seems to line up everywhere as a fullback, as a tight end. What has he meant to this team and to this rushing attack?
Well, he's just key. He's a fabulous player and a fullback. He's 311 pounds and and agile and good hands. They do occasionally use him as a receiver, but what they primarily do is use him as the point of attack. Just throw him into the line wherever the back is going, and good luck. I mean, these linebackers and especially defensive backs, they want no part of him, and so he's just hammering people, and they really needed this because Nick Boyle, who was sort of the same role as a tight end, probably the best blocking tight end in the league, certainly one of them. He's been out for a year since he got hurt. He's just coming back. He is back. He played 32 snaps in his first game 2 weeks ago. Didn't play as much last week. He's going to be a part-time performer this year as he comes back from that injury. So they really need those extra blockers. That's what they are. It's a power running game. And Ricard is the pivotal guy in that. He is the guy they send into the holes. So really, really effective player. I'm sure he's going to the Pro Bowl. I mean, he's in the last year of his contract, and they're going to have to pay him because he's really important.
Overall, how would you break down Alejandro Villanueva's first year as a Raven? Have things been better for him on the left side with Ronnie Stanley being done for the season?
A grade. I mean, it's certainly not going to be a high grade, but it's not an F either. He's had some rough games. Robert Quinn of the Bears just ran all over him. They couldn't stop him. He couldn't stop him. And so I think he almost had 3 sacks in that game. And so he's had a lot of problems, particularly in pass protection against really agile guys. They're having to use extra help there, people to chip his guys and try to help him out. But and his run blocking has been okay. And he certainly, I mean, it's not like he's getting worse or better. I mean, he is tough, he's durable, and he does make some plays. And so, I think all in all, he may be a one and done here. I'm not sure. But the Ravens are glad they have him. They had when Stanley went out, they needed an experienced left tackle. They're just short at that position. And so he is holding up. He's durable and he's out there. And so, I think you can tell where I'm going with this. Maybe, a C, something like that, but he's hanging in there.
When you look at the defensive side of football, it looks like Owa is kind of as advertised, and hard to imagine him not continuing to improve on that right now. This defense, though, overall, I think kind of still lacks in the takeaway department. But this defense just seems to be just good enough, though. They bend a little bit, but they don't really. There obviously were a couple games earlier in the season. I think the Colts sticks out most notably there. But with all the losses, is there one or two players maybe on the defensive side of the football that you can say either having to step up or someone that was already implanted in that defense that is maybe surprised you a little bit or played beyond expectations so far?
Well, the guy who's probably playing beyond expectations is Tyus Bowser, the linebacker. I mean, they let Matt Judon go. He's having a great season for the Patriots. They decided not to pay him. And there were just a number of others. I mean, they lost guys at that position, and so the Bowser is the one guy they brought back. And of course, he's always been sort of a grinder, not a high sack guy. Good athlete. He could cover. He could sort of hold the edge. And they brought him back. They said, well, he's a pro. He's a veteran. He could do this. He's really starting to be a difference maker the last month or so. He's made the last tackle in the last 2 games. One of them was a sack. And then on the 4th down the other night against Cleveland, I mean, he's guarding one of their best receivers. He's out in coverage. He makes a tackle and short of the sticks, game over. He's holding the edge really well against the run. he is getting pressure on guys, and he can make plays, force fumbles. And so Tyus Bowser definitely is doing a lot more, I think, than maybe a lot of fans thought. Calais Campbell certainly is no surprise to any, and he didn't play against the Browns, Campbell. No surprise to anyone. He's an outstanding player. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. Fabulous defensive player near the end of his career. This might be his last year. He hinted at that before the season, but he has really played well this year. After he did miss the last game, but if he's back, it's very helpful. They got a ton of injuries otherwise in the defensive front. Derek Wolfe just never posted this year with a back injury. Brandon Williams was out for a month. And so they have just needed somebody to be a rock in there, and it has been Campbell. He's really playing at an elite level this year. Those guys have really helped.
What when you go into these games, just generally overall, what one thing about defense do you think? Oh man, this defense has got to be on the screws in this area. I guess what I'm getting at is what's the best way, to try to get after this defense. It seems, they played Nick Chubb and the Browns, and they had Hunt back, and you look at, the Browns couldn't do anything with those backs, either kind of out of the backfield or running the football there. So do you have to try to just continually try to drop back and throw 50 times on this defense in order to move the football there? Because obviously that's something the Steelers don't want to have to do. You can't let Roethlisberger stand back there and take the kind of hits that he would probably take in such a game. But is that the way that you have to try to move the football on him? Quick passes along those way.
Well, the quick passes are good, and that's always been effective. It's been pretty effective for Ben against the Ravens, so I'm sure we'll see that. I think you have to run on them. That really surprised me the other night. Without any of their projected starters in the defensive front to shut down Cleveland like that, I don't think anybody saw that coming. That's an excellent running game, and I thought the Ravens were undermanned and in for trouble in that game. And again, to their credit, they just stepped up that aspect of the interior, played great. But if I'm another team, I keep hammering there. I keep trying to make it happen. If I'm the Steelers Sunday, I test it. I use that running. Let's see if you can stop the run. Because standing back 50 times, I don't think that's going to get it done. The secondary, they are down two guys. Marcus Peters and Deshaun Elliott, a cornerback and a safety. They were planning to play this year. They got young guys in there. Well, Anthony Averett is playing the corner in place of Peters, and he's done pretty well. He's certainly not Marcus Peters. And they have a rookie, Brandon Stevens, playing safety, third-round draft pick that nobody thought would be a starter this year. So you can come in and try to bomb them, but they're, I think, getting a little bit better. They do have Marlon Humphrey. They're getting a little bit better at sort of keeping people in front of them and not letting plays. They're really good on third down. Situational football they've been good at this year. And so, I think you have to do everything against this defense. Run some, pass some. And, that's certainly what the Bengals did when they were here. And, the Bengals also took the Ravens out when they came here. And it was a nice mixture. But if anything, they've been really susceptible to giving up a big play at an inopportune time. So you certainly do want to air it out, not just short stuff. But I think you have to try it all.
Alex, write that down. Run Najee Harris 70 times. They might be able to get 110 yards on the ground. So make sure to jot that down, Alex. John, let's flip it over here. And you've obviously have watched this Steeler organization for years. You know all about this rivalry. You got as good a sense as any outsider, that doesn't cover the team on a regular basis of what this 2021 Steelers team looks like. What is your perception right now of this overall team, offense and defense? And yes, the Steelers have had some injuries, but nowhere near the amount that the Ravens have overcome. So you got to kind of, unless you just want to just hammer the fact that the Steelers didn't do a good enough job in the depth portion of their roster and all like that. But what is your overarching kind of thoughts of the Steelers team? Are you surprised where the Steelers team is right now? And what is your immediate outlook kind of the Steelers maybe going on into 2022?
Well, I'm a little surprised. Yeah, I'm always, and again, I'm on the outside looking in. I am a little surprised. I sort of always have great faith in the Steelers' ability as an organization to put a winning team on the field. I mean, few organizations have done a better job of that. And having been on the other side of this rivalry, you almost come to take it as an article of faith that it's going to happen. And so, and of course, not a losing record still at this point.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. But, I do think, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens on Sunday. I don't think it's, maybe we'll see whether that game against the Bengals just pushes the Steelers off a cliff, or if they come back and you never want to play a team a week after they got humiliated, especially a team with a lot of pride and a lot of good players. So, I anticipate a close game. I'd be really surprised the Ravens haven't blown anybody out this year other than the Chargers. But anyway, I do think, it's sort of conventional stuff just looking from afar. I think we're at the end of the line with Ben. I think it's time to move on. It just is. It is, the league is playing at a fast pace, and certainly I'm sitting here in Baltimore with quarterback. No quarterback is faster. And I think, sometimes the Steelers look a little slow with that offense unfurling. So, it's a tough situation because you have to move on at that position. And, if there's not somebody there, you're in a little bit of limbo. The Ravens in various times in their history have been in that position. And it's not the easiest place to be. Finding your quarterback is just, to me, the first building block of any sort of winning era for a team. So, it could be entering that situation there. That's just what it looks like to me. There's certainly still some good players there, and a good coach, and tough-minded, and an organization that has gambled right on a lot of things. But, I do think it's entering a challenging period. At least that's what it looks like to me.
Mm-hmm.
John, to bring it back to Baltimore, you had mentioned this a moment ago and kind of talked about it throughout our conversation. The Ravens defense, maybe not quite as strong as it has been in years past, but situationally they've been very good. First and third down defense, first and red zone defense. What makes them so effective in those key situational moments?
Oh boy, that's a good question. A lot of times the plays they've been given up this year have been, they've given up more 50-yard plus plays than any team.
Wow.
And so when there's space out there and they have lapses in coverage, a lot of it has been communication breakdown. Guys just running wide open, free, and communication breakdown. So I think in a confined space like that, certainly in the red zone and on third down, they tend to bring pressure. Martindale always brings pressure. So, the basic coverage mechanics are pretty solid. Marlon Humphrey, Tavion Young's a good slot cornerback. Anthony Averett, mentioned before, has been really nice. They needed somebody when Marcus Peters went down, and so he's done a decent job. He's not necessarily a Pro Bowl caliber guy, but he can play cornerback in the NFL and has done a nice job, a good tackler. And so, their basic coverage skill, they're pretty well coached in that regard. So, it's just give them a little less space to get outrun or to have a lapse, and they can put the screws on you.
Before I let Dave finish things out, kind of a silly question to ask, but maybe it isn't considering who the man is. I want to ask about Justin Tucker. Is there a limit to his range? I feel like the answer to that is no. Hypothetically, would Harbaugh ever let him attempt a 70-yarder? I know he tried one in warm-ups, I think, in October and connected on it.
Yeah.
Obviously different warm-ups versus a game, but is that possible if he's like the next step for him now that he has the NFL record for longest field goal in a game?
Yeah, well, of course there's a limit. I think 70. I think we might be past it. I think 70 might be too far. 66, okay. It doinked over. Remember, 66
right.
was a doink. So I think you're at the limit right there. And there were moments when people were just fell over shocked. There was I can't remember which game it was. It was within the last month. They were like it was like a low 50s shot, or maybe it was even in the 40s. Was it in Chicago? I can't remember. And they didn't go for it. They didn't, they went for it instead of letting the kicker, instead of letting Tucker try. And Harbaugh was like, they make a decision before every game, taking the wind into account and Tucker's view of the situation into account. What is the limit? And in some games, it's not as high as you think. It's low 50s. And that could be the case Sunday. It depends on the weather in Pittsburgh. Who knows? We're getting into that time of year. But, they don't just run out there and try every 58-yard kick. They're very careful about it. As a matter of fact, Harbaugh is just going, like every coach, I think, in the NFL, is going for it on fourth down like crazy now. So it takes a lot for them to decide to send Tucker out there. But, it's just an incredible weapon. He really is. And there's a 60 Minutes crew trailing him around. I think you're going to see him on. And he's getting pretty big, in the wake of that kick in Detroit to win the game. So he's got a good story, and he's really at the peak of his powers right now. It's something to watch.
John, Ben Roethlisberger meeting the media right now and just told them that he expects Marlon Humphrey to shadow Deontay Johnson on Sunday. Is that what you're kind of expecting to happen?
Yeah, probably so. They have been doing that a lot with Marlon. He's certainly, with Marcus Peters out, is their best coverage guy. He hasn't had his best year so far, and he would be the first to tell you that. He's gotten beat on some plays. He's gotten called for some handsy interference, but he's still just a way above average defensive back, really good. And so, yeah, I think I would expect to see that for sure.
What do you think overall of the overall NFL right now? Do you feel like there's more parity than ever right now? Do you feel that's good for the NFL? The NFL, obviously, you'll probably likes it because you have kind of the it's never been, at least in my recent memory, more of a any given Sunday type scenario right now. Just where are your thoughts right now? And where are the Ravens the best team in the AFC right now?
Well, I'm enjoying the parity's fun. The absolute lack of knowing going in what's going to happen to me is kind of fun. These games this season here in Baltimore has just been ridiculous. You just have no idea what's going to happen from week to week. The games have gone down to the wire. They've had these big rallies. The final quarter against the Colts on Monday Night Football, when Lamar Jackson just went crazy, they were down by 19 points. And so it's been exciting, and it's been a lot of fun. And so it's been very enjoyable here. As to whether they're the best team in the AFC, what's the old Parcells line? You are what your record says you are. They are that. But this thing is by no means decided. That is the overstatement or the understatement of the year. We got a long way to go. This team has escaped. They were behind in the final minutes against two of the worst teams in the league, the Lions and the Bears, actually three of them, and the Dolphins. The Dolphins took them out. They somehow beat the Lions and the Bears. So, this season, their record could look a lot worse than it does, very, very easily. But, finding a way to endure and survive, it is the mark of something. And so whatever that quality is, whether it's just resourcefulness or expectation or pedigree or, I don't have any idea exactly what you would call it, but they have it. And so whether they can rely on that all the way, we'll see. To me, it's to be determined.
John, prediction time here. This feels like when it comes to the Steelers, this is a backs against the wall, game after a backs against the wall game.
Yeah.
kind of thing here. You have former Steelers all calling out the current Steelers now. Mike Tomlin says he doesn't blame them for kind of the narrative that's running around out there. Will that make any difference at all? Are the Steelers going to be able to have a chance in this one? Which way, what way do you see this one going? How about a final score for us?
Well, I think that narrative, of course, what's going on internally in Pittsburgh, I mean, obviously has nothing to do with the Ravens, and that is them needing to get their heads in the right place to play a good game with all that stuff flying around. I think in the long run, I think that stuff, will not keep them from playing a good game. As I said before, I think, the best time to play, I mean, it's never great to play a team a week after just a total butt kicking, because Steelers are home in this game. Season's on the line. They have way more impetus, way more reason to need to win the game. So that alone, and that's the biggest factor. They really need it. But you know what? The Browns needed to beat the Ravens too on Sunday night. The Browns needed it way more, and it didn't matter. I think the Ravens are ignoring that stuff because they feel like somewhere deep in their minds, it's like, well, we could be losing a bunch of games coming up anyway, so we need games just as bad, because who knows when these losses are going to start stacking up the way they're playing. So, I think they're sort of impervious to that whole narrative going on in Pittsburgh. And I don't know, I think it's not the best week to play the Steelers, but I think the Ravens, the way they're going with their belief, they're used to it. They've had some success in Pittsburgh. And I think they can handle a team. I think it'll be a close game, though. I would say 21-19 Baltimore.
All right, John, and with Christmas season now here, perfect time to have you on the show and talk about what's the top book that a Steelers fan that you have written should purchase for, even if they're for someone, maybe just an NFL fan in general. Tell us a little bit about what they should be purchasing from you at either your website, johneisenberg.com, or go to Amazon where all your books are sold.
Yeah, it's everywhere. A book of mine came out a few years ago called The League. It's about the early days of the NFL and the cornerstone owners who sort of dragged the league through the tough early years and set it up to succeed later on. And Art Rooney Sr. is one of those owners for sure, one of the real cornerstone members of the NFL. And as a result, telling his story, there's a lot of early Steelers history in this book. And so it's sort of an amazing tale. You cannot believe in what bad shape the NFL was for many years. And, of course, the Steelers were in the same boat, one of the real losing teams for many years. But Art Rooney was the real conscience of the NFL for many years. And his story is in there and sort of his impact on the NFL, helping create the NFL. I really enjoyed that. I know I've sold a ton of books to your listeners and Steeler fans because I've heard from a lot of them. So I do like that, and I've enjoyed interacting with him. So certainly I wrote it, but I think it's an interesting book for Pittsburgh fans.
It really is. Alex and I both have copies of it and have read it. It's absolutely fantastic, and this time of year is the perfect time to make that kind of a stocking stuffer, just a gift for a football fan in general. John, look, I don't know what this rematch will look like later on in the season here, but we'll definitely be having you on for that as well too. And Alex and I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your morning. I know you got to get to some media stuff here with the Ravens and all. So once again, Alex and I appreciate having you on the Terrible Podcast, and happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you and your listeners as well. And I always enjoy coming on. So thanks a lot.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to John Eisenberg. Follow him on Twitter. Shout him out on Twitter. Let him know that you heard him on the podcast at @BeMoreEisenberg. Again, check out his books, including The League. All right, Dave, good to talk with John. As always, took a while to get to him this year because of the schedule, but glad to talk with him nonetheless.
Yeah, but there was part of me that every question just wanted to be, how bad do you think the Ravens are going to kick the Steelers' butt? I mean, look, and the Ravens have overcome a lot this season, and I think we kind of high pointed that at the top of the interview with them as well too. But I mean, I know Mike Tomlin, says if you can't get up for this game, basically in so many words, if you can't get up for this game, what game can you get up for? I am having a hard time based on the all 22 that I've watched the last couple of days from the Bengals game. I find it incredibly hard to get up for this game, to have any type of optimism when it comes to it. So I don't know if that maybe showed in the interview or what, but it was more like I just wanted to ask him, how bad do you think that the Ravens are going to beat the Steelers over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, getting up for the game is important, and it's one thing, but you can be as motivated and as hungry as possible, Dave. You and I could be out there and be super, super hyped for this game. It ain't going to make much of a difference once the ball's kicked off. So, being hyped and motivated and all that is a good start, but it is far from the deciding factor in the winner of this game.
Right, but I appreciate, obviously, John's insight as
Yes.
usual, and we'll see what shape these two teams are when they meet. Is it the final game or next to last?
Yeah, week 18 will be the
Yeah,
finale.
who knows what we'll be talking about previewing that game or not. But anyway, appreciate John being back on. Make sure you shout him out on the Twitter machine, Be More Eisenberg.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dave, let's talk about the all 22 from this Bengals game. I know we've both gone through it, and I've gotten to go through the entire game. I know you have probably as well. So what are your thoughts here? And I'm sure none of these are pleasant thoughts that are coming, but hit me nonetheless.
Yeah, and I thought about this morning, knowing that we were going to talk about this as well, too, and thinking, man, do people want to continue to hear the gloom, despair, and agony part of it, or would they more want us to talk about maybe a few positive things to pull out of that? And last night I tried to make a concerted effort to go back through both sides again and pull out some positive clips and all like that. And I got to halftime and I felt like the SpongeBob meme where he goes, I'm gonna get out of here, There's not a lot of good in it, Alex. I mean, a positive, a main positive takeaway from it, I thought Deontay Johnson played well. I mean, you see, especially one clip on kind of that comeback over there on the sideline over there, where just the elite level kind of stepping on the toes separation gets the corner to not only open up the gate, but I mean, the corner really has trouble recovering from the position that he was in on top of it, and just wide open over there on the sideline. But my mind instantly went to a negative, is why didn't Ben get that ball out quicker to him on that throw? Coming out of the break there with that much separation, because Deontay even kind of had to stutter a little bit and continue to work back towards the football, and then that made him short of the first down marker at that point. So there was some good there mixed in with some bad. The offensive line, and I think you put up a 10-minute video. I think it's on the site now this morning here. I think the word that stuck out was just the clunkiness of the offense there. And I think you kind of narrowed it down, or at least had 10 plays, I think, in total that you kind of highlighted there. And that's, when you look at the totality of the amount of offensive plays that they ran in the game, I mean, that's a huge waste of plays that execution just gave you no hope on.
Yeah, I think there were 6 in the clip because I didn't want the radio to go on forever, and people probably got tired of listening to the same issues over and over. But there are 2, 3 more at least that you could point out for sure. So that's roughly 10 plays out of 59 snaps. That's, whatever that is, 15, 17% of your snaps are just doomed. And they aren't even, just bad execution. They're bad snaps, they're bad spacing, bad route distribution, drops to one. It's not even included in the clip. I have to do a separate video on that. Is end of the game's pretty much over, so I mean, who cares? But BJ Finney and Trey Turner pulling and running into each other. I mean, it's just some basic fundamental stuff that's nothing to do with like technique and how you use your hands and getting off of blocks and releases and that kind of stuff. It's just simple fundamental stuff that if this happened in a training camp practice, you'd laugh at it because you're like, just wasting plays out there. They have no chance from the start, or you're just, doing some very self-inflicted type of thing. So that's what the issue was to me. This offense was a wreck. It was clunky. It was ugly. It was totally disjointed. They never had a chance to get into a rhythm because of all the self-inflicted wounds. Like the Bengals played a good game, credit to them, but Pittsburgh just hurt themselves in so many basic fundamental ways, and it happened. It's going to happen once or twice in a game. I mean, that just happens when you have a volume of 60, 70 snaps. But I mean, we're talking about 10 plays in a game like this, and that's how you get the performance and the outcome that happened on Sunday.
No real room in the running game once again. One guy messing up, seemingly messing it up for, if the other four got it right, played a huge factor in it. You have tight ends, Gentry on one play, kind of not getting off his first block out to the second level and getting a linebacker that probably cost you, I don't know, a 10-yard run in that situation there. Najee early in the second half, didn't Najee have like 2 drops early in the second half? Of course, the game was effectively, over at that point. But I think that stuck out. Claypool, a huge play that you highlighted there of his middle of the field drop. That who knows how long he runs on that one. If he catches.
Do you blame Ben more? Because I get a lot of blowback for that, blaming Ben, and I think Ben has some criticism there for the throw being late and the double clutch. But I think Claypool, just bottom line, has to make that catch.
All right. Well, how you going to grade? I'll see your question and I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
How you going to grade that throw to Deontay Johnson a couple of weeks ago when Mason Rudolph and Deontay Johnson were, sort of a similar type route concept there, and kind of waiting for a player to clear a window there and the ball out in front. I think it's a little bit of both there. I think there's what I'm saying is I think there's blame on both the wide receiver and quarterback in that situation.
Yeah, I think it's a fair critique of Ben, but I think majority of it goes to Claypool because Claypool's still wide open, and when he catches it, has a chance to catch that football. Like there's no one within 3 yards around him, so he's got to learn to adjust to that. And I think that's one reason why he's not the slot guy, because that's a 3rd and 1 play, end of the half. You need the conversion, you need to have a chance to get points there, and he drops the pass. And that's a play that Juju makes. That's a play that a trusted slot receiver is going to be able to make. And I get it's a little bit of a weird moment because Claypool thought the ball was going to come earlier than it did, but that's life as a receiver. I mean, you're wide open. No one's around you. Make the catch, make the play. And maybe you don't get the yak, and you can blame Ben for the lack of yak and all that, but you got to make the catch there. I mean, the dude's wide open.
I will say this: somewhere on Steelers Depot or in these podcasts talking about Claypool, one of the negatives about him when he did play in the slot, this mostly stuck out on kind of those shallow crossing, mesh type routes, not necessarily slants, although there are probably a few of those mixed in there too. That's when he seemed to have most of his drops were closer to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and so I think maybe that's just a general lack of trust and a lack of consistency. When I think slot receiver, I think you have to be a really consistent guy, and Claypool obviously is not that, and I think that's one reason why he's more of the outside guy for this team.
Okay, but he's not a great Z, is he?
No, he's not as good as he could be. And so then you get to the question exactly what is his
define as good as he could be.
I mean, obviously, like he's a guy that can make the play downfield. He had a pair of 40-yard catches, jump ball moments. He's got to play bigger. He's got to play to his size. He's got to show better hands. He just overall has to play to the physical tools he has. He can be a good Z. I mean, the dude's 6'4", 225, 230 that runs 4.4, and he isn't the burner like you said as a Mike Wallace or Martavis Bryant kind of a guy, but he should be one of those vertical big play weapons, and he can be at times. It's about finding that consistency more in his game, and if he can ever find that and play those physical tools routinely, then I think he can be an effective Z, although in a different type of Z type receiver. He won't be the burner stacking guys as you mentioned, but he can be the vertical threat that this offense requires.
Would it be best to define him as a 50-50 ball Z?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what he was built to be, but he's not winning those 50-50 balls 50-50. It's like 30% of the time, that'll win it. And that's the crux of the issue.
Is that the single best? I mean, is that his strength right now? Is that what's going to keep him around the NFL? Is just being a better than average 50-50 deep ball player?
I mean, that was the intent. He's supposed to be that guy that can high point in sky. He's 6'4" and jumps. What was his vertical? Like 40 inches or something? I mean, he's supposed to be that guy that just that above the rim player that the 5'10" corner just can't compete with because he's not 6'4" and doesn't jump 40 inches. And Claypool was supposed to be that guy that could win those plays, kind of contested, but skying over smaller defenders. And he's capable of doing that. You see it occasionally, but you don't see it nearly often enough.
All right. Do you have faith that he'll get better in that area?
I don't know if I'd use the word faith. I think he has the capability of doing it. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll see.
What's your thoughts when Ben throws one down the sideline like that? As
To
soon as
Claypool specifically?
to either one of them, really.
You know,
And
you just
by
trust
either one of them, I'm throwing James Washington out because they don't hardly even. I mean, it's not
Right.
even going to matter past this season anyway. Whereas Deontay and Claypool obviously should still be around there. But I mean, as soon as you see that that cover one man, and know that Ben's going to go down the sideline, what is your immediate thoughts?
Well, that's my immediate thought is that Ben sees cover one. And he's just trusting this guy to make a play. Ben has a lot of trust in his players, and I mean, think about the interception that he threw to Claypool, and they go back to the very next play and they hit him for a 40-yard play. So there's just a lot of trust there in his guys to make a play. Maybe too much trust in his guys to make those plays vertically.
Is there any other way they should be using him other than the way they're using him?
Not really. I mean, he was designed and drafted and intended to be that Z receiver. And I think you got to see if he can be that guy. Because I think it's honestly, to me, I think obviously you move him around and he's got value as that big slot occasionally. But like if he's not going to be a Z receiver in the NFL, then he's not going to be a receiver in the NFL. Like that's got to be his home. That's got to be his role. And if he can't play those physical tools consistently, it's going to be just one of those all bark, no bite type of receivers that occasionally come across the NFL. Not every 6'4". There's a lot of receivers that look good at the combine and have the numbers and the testing, but don't always translate that to NFL production. And he might be one of those guys. Maybe not, hopefully not. But if he's going to be a good receiver in the NFL, it's going to be a good Z receiver.
Okay. I don't know how I got you going down that rabbit hole there, but talking about the rest of the offense there, hats off to Najee Harris. I thought, especially one clip specifically, more than willing blitz pickup and that kind of stuff. Some good yards after contact once again, but it seems like such a struggle just to get 4 yards on any given play right now with this offense. And in one clip, I think in a TV tape, I think they got 3 yards, and they're like, yeah, that you can hear from the sideline, that'll do it, or something along those lines, and you're cheering like a 3-yard gain or 4-yard gain in this situation. I mean, this offense just. And back to clunkiness again. It just seems like it's pulling teeth to have a perfect drive, and even when they do, and we went for a long time talking about opening possessions. When is this team ever going to get in the end zone on the open possession? They've actually done that this year.
Yeah, they've done a really good job with that, at least better than what they have done.
What do they have? Like 4 opening possession touchdowns, I think, this year.
And a field goal.
And a field goal, all right. But it seems what happens after that now. They no longer are able to seemingly move the football. They obviously don't run outside zone. Crack tosses don't work. It's just a mess. And then you get in a third down situation, and a lot of that even seems to be throw short of the chains and hope you got a guy that can get the first down.
Yeah.
Screen game's still a mess. The screen game's never going to get better, is it?
No, especially the running back screen game. They don't even do it, and they tried it once Sunday, and it got blown up.
What was okay? I imagine
there's really positives in this, right?
Right. I imagine listening to this now so far this season, say, my God, all you do is rip this offense apart. Click. What positives can be taken away from the offense in this game?
Yeah. I mean, Deontay played well. He had that great catch along the sideline later in that game, like a one-handed snag. Don't know how he reeled that one in. He's the best route runner on this team, the most consistent receiver on this team, really good run after kind of a guy, as you said. The opening strips have been overall better this season. It's still a young group, still an offensive line that was totally overhauled, and hopefully just continues to make strides, big picture, than where they were every stage every quarter of the season or so. But from the Bengals game in particular, I mean, there are not really any positives to take away because, I mean, it's you put up 10 points and that touchdown came late in the game. And Freiermuth made a nice catch there. So, I mean, there's a positive, I suppose, although he got hurt on that play. So that's a negative. But, yeah, I mean, there just aren't going to be many positives.
What do you look forward to in these final 6 games offensively?
You smoking there a little bit. I mean, I look forward to everything. I like to watch these guys grow and hopefully get better. And so I don't know if there's one particular thing I'm looking forward to, but I just watching
one
these young guys grow.
One thing you think that would maybe help the running game get better?
I don't know.
You're obviously you're not a fan of Heavy. You think Heavy should go out the door. So it's got to be 11.
I think against the Bengals, I was saying you can't run Heavy because the Bengals respond to Heavy with Heavy, and so I think it depends on the team. So maybe you go heavier against Baltimore this week. I haven't decided. I haven't watched their defense yet, but I don't. It's hard to distill these things into just one issue and just do this one thing and things will get better. I mean, it's usually
there's a lot of
more
things wrong
nuanced
with
than that. Yeah, it's usually more than just one thing.
All right, let's get over to the defensive side of the ball. Move this thing along.
Yeah, I mean, just the run defense was bad, and your run defense is bad in Pittsburgh. It's kind of hard to build up everything else you want to do. It's hard to get pressure. It's hard to put teams in third and long. It's hard to create takeaways and, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of where it starts for you. And the issues run pretty deep there. The defensive line got pushed around quite a bit. The backside cutback on those zone schemes were really available to Joe Mixon. He was able to cut those back on zone runs a lot. They just ran zone weak and crack toss strong, and they did that all day and ran for $198.
They can run that outside zone, can't they?
Yeah, and Mixon's the perfect back for it because he's got this great blend of vision and power and a little bit of quickness as well, a little bit of lateral agility. So he's just like the perfect back for that. It's a Frank Pollard coach scheme over there.
Well, and it's just a little bit of Joe Gibbs' disciples in there too.
Is he? Is Pollard a Gibbs disciple?
Not Joe Gibbs.
Alex.
Alex Gibbs. Yeah.
Right. Is there a tree there? I didn't know where they.
Yeah. There is Callahan's son is involved with the organization, and their offensive line coach, I think, is a Gibbs disciple, isn't he?
Yeah, Brian Callahan. Is there a Shanahan tree? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking.
Yeah, Dan Orlovsky did a quick little video on Twitter that was released, I think, yesterday and all, and he kind of had the tree broken down there. But he did a great job on one of those one particular outside zone run to the left there that just shows you how in unison that line was, and it was just obviously one play, but it ended up, it was a microcosm of how the Bengals were able to run on the Steelers throughout that whole game. The Steelers had no answer for it, couldn't get off blocks in that game, and it snowballed. And when you don't have to drop back very often, and if you're a stay ahead of the change in those second and third situations, which the Bengals did a good job of doing, it really keeps an opposing defense guessing quite a bit.
Yeah, it looks like Brian Callahan, the Bengals OC, got a start in the NFL with Denver in 2010. That was I don't know if that was a Shanahan error or not, actually, but probably some coaching trees there for sure.
Right. Boy, will we ever see a Steelers offense be effective at running outside zone, old school outside zone?
I mean, they just haven't
outside zone.
Yeah, they just haven't had the coaches to really do it a lot. They've been much more of a inside zone gap scheme for the longest time. So, I mean, it just depends on if you bring those coaches in.
Right. And Najee Harris, he's more of a power scheme anyway, so gap scheme.
Right. Other places for this defense here. I watched TJ Watt here, and he was pretty quiet in this game. Obviously, you're just seeing this guy get chipped like crazy the last several weeks, and these teams that don't have the all-star tight ends, it might be different with the Ravens this week, although they'll have multiple tight ends on the field. But, we have a team like, the Bengals that run Uzomah out there, and they don't need Uzomah to be a, central part of their offense. So they can have the liberty to chip and widen Watt's alignment and just kind of make life really tough on him. And so teams are taking a very clear, concerted effort to chip and and disrupt Watt, and there isn't maybe the other, Bud Dupree type of player or the Stephon Tuitt that's going to get that consistent sorts of pressure when Watt's being doubled and just kind of harassed the way that he has.
Right. Other than Cameron Hayward,
Right.
on that line, who do you have that? Okay, they want to pay this much attention to T.J. Watt. We got this to kind of answer, to take advantage of a one-on-one matchup there. Would you and obviously this is out there because we don't look like T.J. Watt's going to play. We hopefully that that expectation is wrong. But would you consider moving Watt over against Villanueva some if he does play, or does it matter?
Yeah, maybe at this point. I'm not saying no to really much of anything at this point. Highsmith can play on the left side. That's not foreign to him. So I mean, would I try? Yeah, I would try. I would try anything at this point.
Right.
And then secondary wise for Pittsburgh, Edmonds played okay. Pierre obviously struggled mightily. I mean, that's about the extent of my thoughts there, I guess.
I mean, it goes back to what Mike Tomlin said, right? If you can't stop the run, I mean, all other conversation probably needs to be tabled until then. Obviously went into this season thinking, defense probably not going to be as good as last year's defense, but I viewed that more as the pass defense in it overall. I had no idea this run defense would be as bad as it is.
Yeah, and obviously at the time you didn't know this Stephon Tuitt wasn't going to play. Alualu was going to get hurt, and Devin Bush was going to regress the way that he's regressed. So some of that was, obviously if Tuitt and Alualu were available, this run defense would be better. I don't know how much better, but certainly better than where it is now.
Right. And I thought Loudermilk had a nice rep or two against the Bengals there. Wormley was Wormley. I mean, you can't fault the guy for being who he is, right?
Yeah, had a sack, had a tackle on a cutback. I mean, he was okay, just not going to bring the highs as Stephon Tuitt. Well, the last thing I'll note for this defense, just a lot of pitch and catch. I'll probably do a video on this. Just a lot of soft zone, just a lot of sit-down curl routes and not even contesting those catches. And you play a lot of soft zone coverage and kind of that country cover three. It's kind of just pitch and catch for Burrow and those receivers.
Right, and you just kind of hope that they make the mistake is what you're getting. Tackle the catch quickly. Try not to give up the big play, which they gave up obviously the one down the field there. So I guess overall they kept a lid on it, but the Bengals didn't really feel stressed to have to push the football down the field that way either.
Yeah. When you run the ball 5 yards a carry, you don't have to be stressed because you're never going to be in third and long. And so tackle the catch doesn't work because you're going to give up the 8-yard reception on 3rd and 4, and it's moving the stick. So the tackle the catch, LeBeau method was all built around good run defense, putting teams in third and forever. And obviously when you're not playing good run defense, that whole idea goes out the window.
Should they blitz more?
It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now the book on Lamar is to blitz him, and so you probably will have to. Some more, but now you're going to leave, a corner one-on-one with Hollywood Brown or Mark Andrews, and so it's a risky proposition. So if you're going to do it, you got to pick your spots and try to be very smart about how you bring pressure.
And also, if you're going to play some man behind that, then you better be in their rush lanes because that Lamar will take off with it.
Right, exactly. So. Yeah, it's hard to play man. So it's hard to do when you don't have the guys, you don't have the personnel. It's hard to do anything, right? It's a losing battle no matter which path you choose.
All right, let's look for optimism. Where's your optimism about the defense coming out of that particular game?
I mean, there isn't much of it. That's a loaded question. I think Loudermilk has shown some promise. I've seen some better burst off the ball. Had some stuff on his stance yesterday. I think he's better from a staggered stance than a square stance. I think that's how he creates some explosion and power and improves his pad level. I think there's something there with him, and I thought Wormley played okay. And I mean, Highsmith, I guess, had a couple decent moments against the run, but he's going to do a better job on backside contain. I mean, that's about it.
Did Kevin Colbert just not do a good enough job building the back end of this roster this year? Period. I mean, you look at the Ravens, and anybody anytime wants to bring up injuries with the Steelers, and look, no doubt about it. The not having 2020 to it and 2020 Tyson Alualu really changes some things, and obviously you've had some games without Watt, and who knows what percent he's at right now. Even when he is playing, coming off that knee and hip injury and all that, you missed Hayden for a couple of games there, but the Ravens will probably laugh at you if you bring up that kind of stuff right now. Did he not do a good enough job building back into this roster?
I mean, short answer is, did he not do a good job? Yes, he did not do a good job. Just based on the results right now, your defense got gutted, and then you compounded those problems by doing things like releasing Steven Nelson, et cetera, et cetera. So, depth can only be so good when you have those injuries, and that's just a big challenge. But the results have not been good enough, and that falls on Colbert and how he built this roster.
Yeah, wrapping up on all 20, it just is not enjoyable to watch either side of football. There's once again, it's hard to have a lot of optimism. Maybe they'll surprise us, man. I'd feel a little bit better, obviously, if I knew for sure if T.J. Watt was going to play. But we
assume he's out, because I mean he could come back, but the odds of that are like 10%.
Man, I don't look forward. Hopefully they'll surprise us. I don't know. I mean, if you can't get up for this one, then what game can you get up? Coming off of a ass kicking that you got from the Bengals, and I mean this is the last stand right here, because I mean let's face it, they already need a modern miracle, I think, to maybe get into playoffs at this point right now. But straight, the way the NFL's going, to parity and all like that, any given Sunday, yada yada. But there's going to be zero optimism, period. I don't see how anybody can have any optimism, whether you lose by 1 or 41 in this one.
Yeah, well said. So, any other final thoughts here, Dave, before we get to some read emails and close out today's show?
Nah, I ain't got any good final thoughts.
All right, let's get to some emails.
All right, let's see here. Let me filter it on down here real quick. Two gappers with Bryce. He says, so in terms of the defensive line, I know we've switched to the one gap scheme for quite some time, but since our inside linebackers are struggling so much and need the defensive line to keep guys off of them, should the Steelers simplify and just have our defensive line play two gap style, try to free up the inside linebackers to roam freely to the ball? I mean, I suppose, but they can't even hold the point of attack in the limited times that they do two gap in this defense right now.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, they do both. It's not exclusively one gap, but you don't have the talent to do some really anything. It's some basic stuff and just assignments on football. So it's a good thought. I understand what you're saying, but I don't really know how much it's really going to change things too much.
Right. I mean, and it's important. There are some two gapping that goes on now, right? But right. They don't have they're not built. A lot of those guys are not built. Henry Mondeau and.
Because then those guys just get pushed into the linebacker when they're two gapping, and they get covered up anyway. So, it doesn't really help you.
Right. So, they're just going to have to continue on what they're doing and probably just figure out a way to dial up pressure, or at least get. The biggest thing this defense needs to do is to get the stops on early downs, on the first down situation there, and try to get opposing offenses to be a little bit more predictable than they've been. But the teams that at times the Steelers, look at the second half of the game against the Seahawks, right? They stayed committed to the run. And the Steelers obviously didn't do a good job adjusting to it. On top of it, that made matters worse. So just getting an occasional stop on first down is not good enough. They got to continually do it for a game throughout the game to give them a chance to dial some things up, or at least put opposing offenses in what they feel is more predictable situations, and hopefully those aren't runs. You want these quarterbacks to have to throw more right now, plain and simple, and especially when and it's too early to really get into about the Ravens and all, but Lamar Jackson's had ball security issues, not only throwing the football, but holding on to the football and pass too. So you got to get in situations where you're trying to get after him and have him have the football in his hands and maybe force a turnover that way.
Yeah, no, well said. But that's easier said than done. And Baltimore is going to be very committed to the run game because that's their bread and butter. And I'm sure they're licking their chops saying we should be able to have a field day against Pittsburgh.
Chris Lookhart writes in, good morning, fellas. I think the Titans of today and the Steelers of the early 2000s and the late 90s have given the recipe of success on offense without an elite quarterback, build up a top 3 offense line, get yourself a quarterback who can make the minimum amount of throws, and a running back who can do it all. I think when you can run the ball, when everyone knows you're running the ball, that breeds success. A game manager like Alex Smith can be a Super Bowl quarterback with the Titans. They just don't have the defense, he says. Look, I was on with Steelers Brazil last night, and shout out to those guys for having me back on. A good bunch over there with what they do, and really had an enjoyable time talking to them last night on their podcast there. One of the things I think, talking about, not only the Steelers now, but, the Steelers past this season and all, people hate to hear it, but I think New England Patriots are a great blueprint right now of how things can quickly turn around without, say, a superstar quality quarterback. If you have a defense in today's NFL, then you can definitely, I think, compete as long as you have I guess, an average offense and a good running game.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the comparison that I talked about earlier this offseason. There'll be that transitional phase. There'll be that year and a half of those growing pains, which is what New England had last season, and they kind of took an offseason. Now, I mean, their plan was they went pretty heavy in free agency. I mean, they went pretty hardcore, and they signed a bunch of tight ends and receivers, and so they spent money. And so Pittsburgh, will they be willing or able to do the same, is a different story. But to the core concept of how they built themselves and how they kind of found their identity, Pittsburgh, is probably worth copying, which goes back to the 04, 05 model of how those early Ben teams were built.
So, I mean, I guess the short answer, I mean, I get where the emailer's coming from, right? You basically a middle of the line, middle of the road kind of quarterback. But I mean, this team has got to get this defense back to at least where it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but I will say, I mean, that all sounds good on paper, but it's harder to do, obviously, because when you have that franchise quarterback, it cures a lot of the ills. Whenever you have, the quarterback as the game manager, you better get that O-line right and hit it nail on the head. Same with the running back, same with the defense, and you better be healthy. Because if any of those things don't go right perfectly as you plan, then your team's not going to be very good, because then you're not going to be an effective team. And running the ball or stopping the run or playing defense with an average quarterback, and that just kind of makes you a middling at best sort of team.
Nicholas Gooden writes in, hi, Dave and Alex. Have you guys fully recovered yet? I think my blood pressure is still high, he says. So much bad to talk about right now, but I want to talk about Tomlin. I don't think Tomlin caused us to lose the game, but I have this thought stuck in my head. He says, Mike Tomlin is an amazing leader of people, and I'm grateful he is a Steelers coach, but is it possible that he can be that and also just be an okay, above average coach? He can say all the right words and fire up a team and build culture like no other, but how much is impacting the game with his actual scheming? I can't remember the last time I felt like the Steelers won a game because they outcoached the opponent. Maybe Bills week 1, but they had the element of surprise there. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean,
you get in a situation like the Steelers are right now, and it's more than ever going to go back to, boy, do the Steelers have the coaches? How much of it's talent? How much of it's scheme? How much of it's coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always hard to tell and to judge because you don't always get to see what the influence and the impact is because stuff happens during the week or calls that get made or don't get made and who's responsible for making the call here, the decision there. I will say this overall, I think coaching really gets defined when the chips are down and you're lacking personnel and you're trying to overcome a talent gap. But I don't think the Steelers have done a good job of overcoming the talent gap the last several weeks, and Tomlin's been very open about that. How maybe the team hasn't adjusted enough to its new faces and its lack of star players and the injuries that they've had and things like that. So I think that's a negative, obviously, in Tomlin's column for not changing this defense enough and overcoming the talent gap.
How much do you think? And another thing, Didi Kinkle-Ballard tweeted out or said something on the radio about this, about Keith Butler never calling a defense. And what do you think about all those comments?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Has he designed this defense? No, probably. Has he literally never called a defense? I think that's just factually wrong. You see some of the stuff on the sideline. I don't know if she means that in the sense of called his own defense, in the sense of stuff that he, built and designed and ran. They were still running LeBeau stuff early on in Butler's tenure, so it's not like it was a total switch over immediately. I mean, you can look at some of the Scar fire zones and storm blitzes and stuff like that. That's very much out of the LeBeau playbook back in, 2016, 2017. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of took it with a grain of salt. I guess that's my short answer there.
How much say do you still think that Mike Tomlin has in this defense on a week-to-week basis? And how much blame should go on Keith Butler?
It's hard to distill it into numbers, but present day and for the last, at least 3 years, I think Tomlin has a pretty large influence on how the defense gets run. Does that mean he calls the defense start to finish? No, I don't think so. But I think Tomlin has a pretty big hand in how the defense gets game planned and run and ultimately called.
And that just makes Keith Butler more puppet than defensive coordinator. Is Keith would it be fair to say that Keith Butler has potentially the less hand, the smallest hand in the defense than any defensive coordinator in the NFL?
I mean,
that's obviously
that's a big
broad question.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, Belichick runs that defense over there in New England, for example.
Good point. Good point.
But yeah, I think clearly he doesn't have the autonomy that a team with an offensive minded, whoever the DC in LA with the Rams are. Sean McVay's not calling the defense the way that Mike Tomlin's influencing the defense. So it's a smaller influence. How to compare that with the rest of the league? I mean, I don't know how to answer that.
All right, now let me continue on digging into this hole here. Would it surprise you if Keith Butler's out after this season?
No, it would surprise me if he was back, because his contract's going to be up to Dude 65, and this defense has not played well. And I'm not blaming Butler solely for that, but I think it's probably a good, clean time to move on for both sides.
I would agree with that.
You think Butler's gone?
Yeah, I think, and I told the guys on Steelers Brazil last night that as well too. I would not be shocked at all if this is it for Keith Butler. And on the flip side,
parted ways is what's going to be coming up.
I mean, what I don't know if Butler would even consider this, but I mean, would you demote him back to outside linebackers coach?
No, because Dunbar's coaching those guys anyway, so it's not even like that's really a job for the taking anymore. I think you just move on.
And let's assume we are correct, and Keith Butler's not back after this season. It's got to be Terrell Austin, right?
It could be.
Do you see him going outside?
No, I don't see him going outside. I think it'll be a promotion. I think Carl Dunbar could be a guy too, because I think he's been a really good coach for them, and I think there's a good relationship there. And so I could see probably Austin or Carl Dunbar being DC.
But either one would still pretty much be an extension of the hand of Mike Tomlin, though.
Right. Which is why I think it's more likely it could be Dunbar, because Austin might want to run the defense more the way he sees fit, because he's been a DC before and had head coach aspirations and stuff like that. Dunbar might be more, how do you want to say it, malleable than Austin would be.
Should they go the route of Austin and should Mike Tomlin be a little less hands off?
It's a very good question. I don't know how to best answer that, to be honest with you.
It's something we're going to have conversations, I have a feeling, about.
Yeah. I mean, listen, these defenses the last couple of years have been really good. Now, they've been star-studded talent across the board, but let's not forget about
last year's defense, we talked. I mean, if there was any chance that this team had in recent memory to potentially make a run at the Super Bowl, it would have been last year with this defense. So, and the defense, well, I mean, of course, you had all your pieces, most of your pieces in there as well, too. So, maybe Kevin Colbert needs to do a better job of putting back in reserve groceries in the closet.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to drafting defenders in the first round for like 8 straight years. We're back in that mode, I guess.
Look, you're not gonna get any complaints from me on that. To be honest with you, personally, Alex, I think in today's NFL, no matter how good a quarterback you have, I think quarterback obviously helps you offset that. But I don't think you're going to win in the NFL unless you have a defense that can stop the run and have an adjusted net yards passing attempt number of under 5.65, 5.7, right around there. The rest of it all might look good. You might have a good record. You get into the playoffs, though. At some point, you need that other side of football, specifically defense, and it would not hurt. Look, I think this team obviously could use a wide receiver, and there's so many. And we talked about this with the guys, or I did with the guys on the Steelers Brazil. this team's got a lot of holes, man, and they got more holes than draft picks right
Yeah.
now. And unless they change kind of the philosophy of actually spending some money in free agency, it makes you kind of wonder what this offseason is going to look like. But back to the key point there, it would not disappoint me at all to see them go defense in first 3 picks.
Yeah, maybe mixing an offensive lineman. We'll
Mhm.
see. There's a lot of routes this way this draft class could go, and that's exciting, and it's also concerning because that means there's a lot of holes in this team.
Jason Campbell, it's obvious that this version of defense is bend don't break mode, but that isn't very effective if you're constantly being broken. Duh, he writes. Considering Butler's comments written up by Alex on 10-14-21, should more of the defense failures fall on Tomlin's shoulders? Well, this plays right into what we just talked about. Seems like his soft zones and conservative blitz rates are directly related to the lack of turnovers and weakest defense in a long time, he writes. Different story with Alualu, Tuitt, and a healthy Watt getting pressure without blitzing, but that's not the case now. Why not get aggressive and risk a few deep passes? It can't be much worse. Might even get a few tackle for losses on runs while trying to hit the quarterback. Hey, look, Alex, I kind of hit on it. Pick your poison. You know, do you want Marquise Brown running laps on you and take your chances that way? And Lamar can put that ball out there for him. Lamar probably not. Marquise Brown makes Lamar Jackson an even better deep passer, and that's a duh. But I think that needs to be underscored because there's been some passes that Lamar Jackson's let loose on some all 22 tape I've watched already this season. I thought, no way, oh my God, how did he catch that? You know, how did he get to that? You know, it goes back to the old Ben Roethlisberger, throw it deep, and Mike Wallace runs up underneath it. Martavis Bryant runs up underneath of it. Uh, if you have to consistently send more than 4 to get pressure, it's gonna bite you in the butt, I think.
Yeah, and it was. That's where they got burned by Jamar Chase in week 3. They got burned by Henry Ruggs in week 2. They got burned by big plays after big plays, and I think you got to pick your poison. And Tomlin and most coaches I think share this is they don't want to give up the big play because the big play changes momentum. It doesn't force a team to go 10 plays. Now they only go 2 plays or 1 play, and they hit it in the end zone. It's just a big swing in the game, and so I think teams would rather be more conservative than aggressive. And maybe that's the wrong answer. And again, I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. But I think that's the overall calculation that Tomlin's been making.
All right, now minus T.J. Watt on Sunday against the Ravens. I mean, and you look back at the Miami Dolphins and blitzing that. You probably need to just try that. Go after him. Period.
Yeah.
And maybe
Man,
stop the run on the way to the quarterback if you can.
I know I was a little biased because I was such a big fan of his play, but man, this team misses Vince Williams so much for not only the run defense but the linebacker blitzes. How good was he in that B gap against that running back or getting scot free, man? And you don't have that guy, Bush, Schobert, Spillane, not capable of that. So even when you want to bring extra guys, it's like who's a good effective blitzer? Millette is okay, I guess, but from an off-ball standpoint, I mean, I know Bush has a sack or 2 this season, but you don't have that guy that was as good as Vinny.
John Robb writes in from Virginia. Would you consider trading Claypool, getting Juju signed, and finding a legitimate Z in the draft going into next year? I'll listen to anything anybody has to offer for sure. The thing is if you don't trust Claypool as a Z, why are other teams probably going to trust him as a, my mind automatically goes to trying to reverse engineer questions like this and trade scenarios and all like that. So I guess I'd be open to listen to anything. I think this team needs the Mike Wallace, Martavis Bryant type player personally for whoever the quarterback is. So yeah, I would listen, especially if I knew that I was getting Juju re-signed to be the slot and obviously probably would have to make sure you got Ray back and you still have Deontay and all like that. I would listen to it. I just wonder what you would get, how marketable it would be, in the trade market for a guy like Claypool. Your thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, I think there would still be some value there as a guy rookie contract. 2 years left after this season? Pretty rare physical skill set. I mean, fourth round pick for Claypool, or do you think fifth?
Yeah, I would hope that you'd be able to get a fourth for him.
Yeah. So I mean, would I be open to it? See how the rest of the season goes. I don't like talking about that stuff too much middle of a season, especially past trade deadline. But yeah, am I 100% opposed to the idea? No, I understand what the reader's saying there.
Look, if this team loses to the Ravens, then we're going to start getting a lot more questions about
Hmm.
past this season. We're already getting them now. Lenny writes in, Dave, I'm curious. Stephon Tuitt aside, when was the last time we drafted a defensive lineman before the 6th round in the last 10 years? I know we drafted Loudermilk this year. I think our lack of investment is rearing its head. Also, all these players recently talking about practice leads me to believe that it starts at the top. I know for years I've felt that Ben needs to get his nose in the playbook more and really know all of his reads better. He seems lost sometimes during games and doesn't seem to know where his receivers are. That's a lot in that email there. Look, I mean, you didn't. If you, what would this defense look like if you had Stephon Tuitt and Tyson Alualu and you didn't have to play Loudermilk more this year? Then could you say, okay, well then most definitely defense is better, and then next year's a year, or 2022 is a year that they probably need to invest a little more heavy there. I don't think they went into the draft this year thinking we're not going to have Tuitt this year, we're not going to have Alualu this year, and obviously they had the issues on the offensive side of football that they had to address, and they did. So I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 here when you talk about defensive line specifically and not investing enough, because Stephon Tuitt is still a young man, relatively speaking.
Yeah, he's 28, I think. Yeah, I mean the reason why they didn't draft those linemen high if they drafted Hayward and Tuitt was because they drafted Hayward and Tuitt, and you didn't have to. There wasn't a big need to draft defensive linemen highly. They didn't draft a lot of offensive linemen in top, day 2 picks after they found the starting 5 that they had with Pouncey and DeCastro, et cetera. So, and they drafted who was it, Alameda Tamu back in 2012, fourth round. So, are you not entertained? But but no, I get the point there. But overall, I mean, they just had a strong defensive
Joshua
line.
Frazier.
Well, he said before, I think
Okay.
5th round, and he was a 7th round pick. But yeah, there just wasn't a big compelling need, and they had Alualu. They made some free agent signings. I mean, I get the point there, but you hit on your top guys, and so you didn't have to draft guys highly behind them for quite some time. But yeah, and then to the practice point, with Ben and his reads, I mean, sometimes the receivers are just doing whatever. The video I posted today kind of shows receivers being bunched up and just running incorrect routes or spacing being poor, and so that's kind of muddied things up there a bit. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe or to know how much Ben knows or doesn't know the playbook, and I think he's done overall a good job this year adjusting to the newness of the Matt Canada coached offense.
All right, we've run long enough, but let me get one more in here because the email box is just overflowing here. From Cohen writes in, hey, Dave and Alex, based on the premise that the Steelers are indeed not interested in starting from scratch with a rookie quarterback, and in parentheses it says, especially with this uninspiring quarterback draft class, in parentheses, to what extent would the current level of offensive line quality of play affect the process of convincing a veteran quarterback to choose Pittsburgh? Oh, man.
Well,
Go ahead.
when you're talking a big name guy like, because I asked myself the same question, okay, why would an Aaron Rodgers want to come to Pittsburgh right now based on the current construct of the team as opposed to a Denver or the 49ers or something like that? And I think that's valid. Now, a more middling veteran guy that's just looking for a job, like, again, the names that everyone hates me to mention, the Mariotas, the Taylors, the Bridgewaters, et cetera, those guys just want a job opportunity, get some money, and try to start and play. So those guys will probably want to go basically anywhere they have an opportunity to have a clear-cut chance to start.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at the perceived guy, or at least the speculated guys that people feel that the Steelers might have interest in, the Aaron Rodgers, the Russell Wilsons, you would think those guys wouldn't. Now, look, they might not have an overall say, because those guys. That's another thing that's so hard. People want us to talk about. Oh, what do you think about Aaron Rodgers? You just don't push the button and that happen. Those guys are under contract, so a trade's got to be made. Who knows what? I think there's probably some clauses. I would bet some sort of. Doesn't Aaron Rodgers have a say in where he goes, or no?
If it's not in his contract, I'm sure he literally could shut anything down. So yeah, I mean those guys, they're gonna get the pick basically
Right.
where they want to go or somewhere that they want at least want to go to.
Right. So once again, it's so hard. People see all this stuff in the media and say the Steelers are going to have interest in Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson but it's so hard to speculate to give solid analysis of what might happen with that because it's not really news. There's nothing there other than people speculating that the Steelers might be interested in a higher quality guy like an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson. There's so much minutia that goes into that kind of stuff. It just I don't know how they expect us to answer the questions. I guess that we get on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's all stuff we'll have a full off season to discuss and go over 47 times. So I promise you there'll be plenty of time to
Sure.
discuss all that stuff.
Probably starting after this week if the Steelers don't win. We
Probably
get a
starting
lot
after.
more. All right, Alex. Probably time to get out of here with this. We appreciate John Eisenberg for being on. Let's see. We'll be back on Friday previewing the Ravens game, more in depth there. Give you our predictions and all. I'm trying to find one way to have optimism that maybe even make me consider picking the Steelers in this game. So maybe I'll get to that point. Maybe I won't. But we'll be talking all about it on Friday. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you want an ad-free version, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free version up there, and follow the directions of getting that done. So in the meantime, Alex, I appreciate your time, and we will be back on Friday. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.